So there's this unsaid fact about football related to expectations versus the actual performance. There are certain teams which, based on the players they produce or the history they have, are expected to perform well, like Brazil, Germany, France, etc. Then there are teams that aren't really regular producers of top players, nor they have a rich history of winning titles in big tournaments. And when a team like that competes with those nations which have resources and history, those performances get noticed in the world of football, and it becomes David versus Goliath kind of a scenario. And those teams write the underdog story which football fans love. One such team is Croatian football team. Yes, Croatia, a country that was formed in 1991 and has a population which is less than 4 million. They lack the financial muscle for a solid footballing infrastructure, nor do they have the footballing history. But still, they have made big footballing nations look small, and I feel has created a place in the hearts of footballing fans. But even after the underdog story that they are one of the most unluckiest teams in football. So in this video, we'll discuss first of all how good they have been compared to many other nations, and even after coming so close to winning it all, they missed on some major titles, and I think the story must be discussed. So without any further ado, let's talk about the story of Croatian football. And we come up with such videos regularly, so a subscription won't hurt. So Croatia, as I told you, became a country in 1991. The first tournament that Croatia could participate in was the 1996 Euros, where they were placed in a group with Denmark, Portugal and Turkey. Not the easiest group, but they still qualified, beating Denmark and Turkey. But in the next rounds, which was quarterfinals and not the round of 16, they were eliminated by Germany. Beating Germany at that point was not the easiest thing, as they were one of the best footballing nations in the world. And for Croatia to finish 7th in the first tournament they participated in was still a big achievement. The next real tournament for them was going to be the World Cup. And the first World Cup they could compete was on 1998. And for a team that is playing the World Cup for the first time, in fact they just became a country. For them, qualifying their group or winning the round of 16 could have been a great achievement. Any guess as to what place they ended up in the end? You would be surprised to know that they finished in the 3rd place in their first World Cup. Yes, they were the 3rd best team after the two finalists, Brazil and France. And it was not like they faced average teams or were lucky to reach the semi-finals. Initially, they were in a tough group with Argentina, Japan and Jamaica, where they beat both Jamaica and Japan and lost to the Argentine team just by 1 goal. And that Argentina had players like Zanetti, Batistuta, Diego Simeone, Marcelo Gallardo and more. Still, they came out of that match with their heads held high. Now qualifying to the round of 16 was a big thing, but they were to face Romania, and Romania was unbeaten in this tournament so far, while beating teams like England and Colombia in the group stage, and had just conceded 2 goals so far. So between Croatia and Romania were the clear favourites to qualify. But thanks to Davor Suker, who scored a late first half goal, Croatia qualified for the quarterfinals, and their opponents this time were Germany, the team that eliminated them in the Euros. Now, I don't have to talk about how big Germany was at that time. They were the World Cup winners of the 1954, 1974 and 1990 editions. Only Brazil was the team who had won more World Cups than Germany. So obviously the favourites, right? Well, Croatia beat Germany by 3 goals with 0 conceded in what was one of the most iconic World Cup matches in terms of the underdog beating the favourites. Yes, they were the debutants and they freaking dominated the footballing powerhouse. Can you imagine the feeling these players and the supporters would have had? Anyways, now they were to face France in the semi-finals, who were the host nation, and if they beat them, it would have been the biggest story in football till date. And they almost did it. Croatia took the lead in Stade de France, and there was a feeling that this team is going to complete a fairy tale story. But 2 goals by Lilian Thuram in the second half rescued France and broke the Croatian hearts. And France eventually beat Brazil in the finals to lift the World Cup trophy. What could have been? Anyways, Croatia now had to face Netherlands to settle the 3rd place, and Netherlands, who lost to Brazil on penalties in the other semi-final, were the trophy contenders with players like Van der Sar, Jaap Stam, Dennis Bergkamp, Patrick Kluivert, Clarence Seedorf, Frank de Boer and more. And for this team to reach the finals was not a far-fetched thing, but Croatia beat them by 2 goals to 1 and finished in the 3rd place. Croatia did not win the tournament, but they won the fans. They had the best debut of any footballing nation, I suppose. A team that was not even considered to reach the knockout stages left the tournament as the national heroes. Their player Davor Suker won the Golden Boot ahead of players like Ronaldo Nazario, Gabriel Batistuta, Dennis Bergkamp, Thierry Henry and many big names. They almost had a fairy tale story, and just when the world started believing in them, their run was ended, and although in a very respectable manner, but still they were not the winners. And this pattern you will see more than once with the Croatian team. Now, to reach the semi-final once is one thing, but to maintain that level of competition in big tournaments is another. If you see, the national teams that are considered to be strong in terms of their football have one or more of the following: a strong domestic league, financial muscle to develop the youth, a regular supply of talents, or the last one, history. And Croatia in a way lacked all of the above. Add to that the unstable scenario of a country that has just been formed, So after having the best debut in the international football scene, Croatia could not build on that. Croatia did have the fastest ascension in FIFA ranking history. They went from 125th place in 1994 to 3rd place in 1998. A feat that was never achieved, and I don't think it will be achieved anytime in future. And ideally, future teams should have built on the success of that 1998 team. But after that season, their results in major competition were disappointing. Now, a major part of the reason was, before they became an independent country, Croatia was a part of Yugoslavia. And Yugoslavia as a football team was a respectable name of that time. They had 2 Olympic silver medals, qualified for the World Cup semi-finals twice, and finished as the runner-ups of European Championships twice. The last World Cup they played in 1990, they reached the quarter-finals. So basically, football was not an unknown sport for Yugoslavian people. And when Croatia became a country, good players with footballing pedigree were there who played for Croatia. So to say that Croatia had no footballing history would be unfair. But a newly independent country have many other struggles apart from playing football. And the current generation of the players were aging. And the players who were next in line did not have the same pedigree or resources to compete with the teams playing at the highest level. So they were going to struggle. Miroslav Blažević was their coach who took them to 3rd place World Cup finish. And the next tournament after that was the Euros in 2000. And after they failed to qualify for the tournament, Blažević decided to end his time as the coach of the Croatian team. And the coaches who came after that, none of them stayed for more than 2 years. So it was an unstable environment. Their players and fans in general were not very hopeful of the team at that point. Then, in August 2006, Slaven Bilic came in as the manager. And it was not like he started winning from the get-go, but he brought in some positivity. And I must also share that he was a part of that Croatian team which finished 3rd in the 1998 FIFA World Cup. And one thing that I must mention about that squad is those guys had some mentality. They were from a war-struck country and were playing in a situation where they must be hearing something devastating every day, but they still played their best football, so they could bring some smile to the faces of the people in their country. And Slaven Bilic came in with that mentality. And at the same time, some young players with a lot of expectations like Ivan Rakitic, Mario Mandzukic and Luka Modric were starting to get noticed. And the Croatian public were somewhat optimistic of the future of their national team. Now, the next tournament that they could qualify for was Euros 2006. And they were doing well. In the 12 qualification matches they played, they topped the group with 9 wins, 2 draws and 1 loss. Now qualified for the Euros, they got placed in a tough group with Germany, Austria and Poland. And to surprise of many, they finished that group in the first place, beating all 3 teams including Germany. Now they were to face Turkey in the next round. And that match was one where both teams played a hard-fought draw in the 90 minutes. And in the extra time, Klasinic scored a goal for Croatia in the 118th minute, hoping that he had taken his team to the next round, only for Turkey's Semih Şentürk to score a goal in the 122nd minute and break Croatian hearts. And that match then went on to penalties when Modric and Rakitic failed to score and Turkey qualified to the next stage. Fun fact, Turkey lost to Germany in the semi-finals, who Croatia already beat in the group stage. So basically, Croatia had to go back because of a 122nd minute goal by Şentürk. And we'd never know what could have been if Croatian defense held on for 1 more minute. And now, after the disappointment in Euros, the next big event was going to be the World Cup 2010. And Croatia in a qualification group with England and Ukraine needed at least 21 points to reach 2nd place and qualify. But they could only accumulate 20 points. And Ukraine with 1 more point qualified with England. And for the first time since 1998, Croatia failed to qualify for the World Cup. They won every match apart from the draws against Ukraine and losses against England. If any of those results went in their favor, they would have had a perfect World Cup qualifying record. Anyways, moving on to the Euros 2012, they qualified for the tournament through playoffs, but were unlucky to be placed in the group of death with Italy, Spain and Republic of Ireland, very much similar to this year. And just like this year, they failed to qualify the group. Now you have to understand that beating Spain and Italy was not that easy that year, because both the teams were so good they went unbeaten the whole tournament and played in the final, which obviously Spain won. So again, getting placed in the toughest group possible was not a favorable thing for Croatia. And this was the last tournament where Slaven Bilic managed them. Now my idea was not to discuss about the corruption or scandals of the country, because I wanted this video to be more about how despite of limited resources, Croatia have been this good in major tournaments. But you won't get a complete picture if I don't talk about this person. Zlatko Mamić has been one of the most influential people in Croatian football and have had his fair share of controversies. He was an administrator, sports agent and executive director at Croatian club Dinamo Zagreb. He is known for his hostile behavior towards journalists, as he would threaten them for asking questions. He's been found guilty of tax fraud as well. But the major controversy that he was involved in was that he would make some shady deals with players when they were young, wherein he will offer some money to the young players, which will be a big amount for them at that time, but in exchange, he will take a major part of their future salaries and payments. Downright greedy and illegal in every sense. You can read his case with the player Eduardo da Silva, who sued him for the exact crime and also won the case. Now he has had such and more controversies with regards to the Croatian football, including similar cases with the most important Croatian players in Lovren and Luka Modric. Yes, he also made deal with Luka Modric when he was young. Now from all of this, how much benefit does the players get is questionable, because Mamic was a powerful figure in Croatian football. Not many could oppose him. So I assume that it would have been hard for young Croatian players to question him on what deals is he forcing him into. And doing all this, he made a major chunk of money through players and tens of millions through Dinamo Zagreb. And he would not have been the only one benefiting from it. So when the whole story broke down, Croatian fans were devastated and they showed their anger on the pitch. Throwing flares, burning swastikas, they were letting the authorities know that they are not happy with the wrongdoings in Croatian FA. Anyways, both Slatko and his brother Zoran Mamic, who was the manager at Dinamo Zagreb, were found guilty of multiple charges. Both of them somehow escaped the Croatian authority and has been residing in Bosnia ever since they were found guilty in 2018. And I cannot help but think if people like Mamic were not depleting Croatia of their resources, their football, their results in the major tournaments would have been even better than they were. Now getting back to their story in the major tournaments, departure of Slaven Milic disrupted the stability that Croatian football had. Some decent coaches like Niko Kovac also managed them, but there was a lack of identity and the team struggled in the major competitions. For 2014 World Cup, which was under manager Niko Kovac, they qualified comfortably in the second place and also won their friendlies before the World Cup. But in the World Cup, they again had the toughest group, with Brazil, Mexico and Cameroon in it. And although they managed to beat Cameroon by 4 goals, they got beaten by both Brazil and Mexico by a scoreline of 3 goals to 1, and they failed to make it to the round of 16. And the next tournament was Euro 2016 under new manager Ante Kasic. And Croatia qualified with 6 wins, 3 draws and 1 loss behind first place Italy. And they got a group which for a change was not the group of death, with Spain, Turkey and Czechia. And this time they topped their group, beating Spain and Turkey and playing a 2-2 draw against Czechia. Now it was the time of round of 16 and the team that Croatia played against was Portugal. And I don't know if you remember the Portugal of 2016, but they played a defensive brand of football with low blocks and was a team which was hard to score against. Their match against Croatia was a goalless draw in 90 minutes. Then in the extra time, when it was just 3 minutes left before penalties, a Ronaldo shot was saved by the goalkeeper and the ball went to Quaresma, who tapped in to score the goal and send Croatia back home. That would have been so frustrating for Croatian fans. And just on a side note, Portugal more or less in a similar manner won the whole thing that year. And Croatia was, let's say, not impressive. And now it had been some time since Croatia had an impact in any of the major tournaments. But I'd like to bring your attention to the national teams and their coaches here. Because if you look at the teams that have won major titles or have played impressive football, those teams have had some stability with their managers or had adapted to their vision. From Del Bosque Spain to Joachim Löw's Germany to the France of Deschamps, every team had a different identity and played football based on that. Even previous Euros winners like Portugal or Italy with Santos and Mancini, they had a clear vision of what kind of football they wanted to play to win that competition. So just having good players is not enough. There has to be a style of play which should suit those players. And manager is the one responsible to create that vision, to create that identity and convince his players to execute that on the pitch. And Croatia after Bilic lacked that identity. They had 3 coaches in 4 years and they were going nowhere. Croatia's team by now had players who were performing at the highest level in Europe. Rakitic was a mainstay at Barcelona midfield. Mario Mandzukic was scoring goals in the Champions League finals with Juventus, while Perisic and Brozovic were an important part of Inter Milan team. Then there were talents like Mitrovic, Lovren, Kovacic, and of course how can we forget Luka Modric. All in all, Croatia had a talented squad, but because of the unstable coaching situation, they were not playing at their full potential. But that was about to end. In October 2017, Zlatko Dalic walks in to take over the role of head coach of Croatian team. Now Dalic was no Ferguson or Guardiola. In fact, there wasn't much excitement around his arrival. As a player, he won the Yugoslavian League with Hajduk Split and managed Croatian and Albanian clubs in his early coaching career. And he was coming off a strong stint at Saudi, winning the league and cup with Al Hilal and multiple trophies including the Asian Champions League with Al Ain. But people had doubts as to how his success at Saudi would reflect with the national team. But he was a man with a vision. When he joined the national team, he stated that he would remain the head coach if only Croatia qualifies for the 2018 FIFA World Cup. And if he failed to do so, Croatian football's governing body, the HNS, will be free to decide his future. And I think that was a strong statement. opponent. Now in the World Cup qualifiers, they were competing with Ukraine for the second spot, as Iceland has already secured the first place with 22 points, and Dalic led Croatia to a 2-0 win over Ukraine, securing the second place, which meant that they will now have to play a two-legged playoff round to confirm their place in the World Cup, and their opponent was Greece. Now Croatia in the first leg won with a dominant scoreline of 4-1 and drew their second leg. That means they have qualified for the World Cup now, following which Dalic signed official contract with Croatia. And now, we have reached the World Cup 2018. They had a good squad, a good coach, but let's be honest, no one had Croatia going a long way in this World Cup, because there were teams out there which on paper were much stronger. Croatia were placed in a group with Argentina, Nigeria and Iceland. Not the easiest, as Iceland recently beat them in the qualifiers and Argentina is Argentina. But Croatia topped that group convincingly, beating all three teams including Argentina with a scoreline of 0-3. Then they met Denmark in the round of 16, and after a hard-fought 1-1 draw, the match went on to penalties, which Croatia won by 3-2. Then in the quarterfinals, they met the host Russia, and again the match went to penalties, this time after a 2-2 draw. Penalty shootout was also intense. With a scoreline of 3-4, Croatia knocked out the home side. Now qualified for the semi-finals, Croatian team had already earned respect of many football fans, mainly because people could see their efforts on the pitch. They ran their heart out, they fought for every loose ball, they put efforts till the end. Out of top 5 runners in the World Cup, top 3 were Perisic, Rakitic and Modric. So efforts were there, and there was a feeling that them reaching the semi-finals was well deserved. But they had to face England, who were one of the favourites coming into the competition. Now in the match, Trippier opened the scoring in the 5th minute, and England sat back to defend. Now Croatia were finding it difficult to break them, but Perisic found the back of the net at 68th minute. Match again went to extra time, and Mario Mandzukic in the 109th minute got behind the English defence to score what was one of the most important goals in Croatian football history, taking them to the final of FIFA World Cup. Yes, after all that the fans had seen, the struggle, the fights, the controversies, after everything they faced, this Croatian team went one step ahead than the 1998 team. They were going to play the World Cup final, and the team they were going to face was France. Now France this year was the clear favourite. They played the final of the Euros 2 years ago and have improved since with players like Griezmann, Kylian Mbappe, Pogba, Kanté and more. So they in the end were a little too much for the Croats. They scored 4 goals past them, and Croatia could only respond with 2 goals and finished as the World Cup runner-ups. Now obviously, winning the World Cup would have been the achievement of a lifetime, but if you compare Croatia and the other nations they were competing with, what they were able to do seems to be a great achievement in itself. The only match they lost was against France in the final. Now of course it's sad that they came so close but could not lift the trophy, but again, they did everything and more to achieve that feat. And after the World Cup, they got much deserved respect from around the world. Modric not only won the Player of the Tournament award, but also won the FIFA Men's Player of the Year and the Ballon d'Or. All in all, 2018 became the best year in Croatian football history. Anyways, their showing at the World Cup was the strongest. And after that, year on year, it felt like their performance level reduced. But still, they were giving competition to big teams. Like in 2020 Euros, they qualified their group to face Spain in the round of 16 and played a scintillating 3-3 draw in the 90 minutes, but lost in the extra time. Then in the World Cup 2022, they again qualified their group and were to play Japan in the round of 16, whom they beat in the penalties. Then faced Brazil in the quarterfinals, again a draw in 90 minutes and won the match in penalties. Then in the semi-finals, they lost to the eventual World Cup winners, Argentina. Then in the Nations League next year, they reached the final, and this could have very well gone in their favour, but the match went to penalties, which Spain eventually won by 4-5. So with Croatia, they have never been one of the favourites, but with sheer efforts and hard work, they end up challenging the best teams. And I feel for their fans, as it must be hard for them to accept that after coming so close, they went trophyless. It has been the same story from that 1998 team till now, and even remembering the Yugoslavian team before that, which was a good team of that time, but could not win anything major. And just on a side note, many believe that they were the strongest team in the year 1992, where they qualified for the Euros with flying colours, but were disqualified because of the Balkan Wars, because of which Denmark took their place in the Euros Group 1 and ended up winning the whole tournament. So I think that they have been the unluckiest of nations with regards to winning trophies in football. And now, while I record this video, it's Euros 2024 and they are still managed by Dalic. Modric is still there, but it always felt like the end of the cycle. And the funny thing was, they were in the group of death again with Spain and Italy. And although they could not qualify the round of 16, but I will appreciate their efforts again. This team, yes, they lost to Spain, but were winning against both Italy and Albania, only for both the teams to equalize at the 96th and 98th minute. Yes, both Italy and Albania scored the equalizer to send Croatia back home in the last minutes of both the matches. I understand, it's not easy to be a Croatian fan. You have dealt with a lot. So all my respect to you guys, and I hope that the next generation goes one step ahead and we see Croatia lifting major trophy. And if you're still watching this video, I thank you for the hard work. I accept it was a tough watch. And if you think that my efforts were worth your time, a like would be more than enough. And I have limited subscribers, so I respond to every single comments, so feel free to share your thoughts. And I come up with similar content, so if that sounds good to you, you can subscribe to Football Ledger. Have a good day, and I'll see you on the next one. Ciao.